Hey, everybody, I'm John Granado. That's Josh Jordan. You can hear us on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5. You can also see Josh's work at sportsmaphouston.com. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet so you get all of our content here at SportsMap HOU. Framber. Wow, is he good. He is so good. If JV is gone next year, are you comfortable with Framber as the ace in this staff?
I think it's ultimately going to come down to how the playoffs go this year, John. That's what's going to make my mind up, and here's why. 2020, he was great in the postseason. Last year, outside of Game 5 against the Red Sox, he was really poor. So I think he's turned a corner for sure as far as regular season. I think it's there. But as far as postseason, he's got to show me something this year to give me that confidence that when these games are really big and they need him, that he can go out there and get him 7 innings.
Yeah, I think he will. I think he's got a confidence that he hasn't had before. That breaking ball is something. It is so hard. It's diving at so many ground balls. Every metric says that he is going to be good, not only now, but in the postseason. He's been good against bad teams. He's been good against good teams. Everybody's just having a real hard time with Framber this year. And I think a lot of it is in his head. Remember when he saw the psychologist, it changed him. I mean, it gave him a mental focus, and he was just a different pitcher. So now with this confidence on top of that, with the way that he's pitching, I think we're going to see a guy. Now, am I comfortable with him as the ace of this? I'm not. I think you got to have two horses. You look at all of the best teams, the teams that are going to compete for the World Series. Look at the Dodgers with their Buehler, who's down, obviously, but Gonsolin, and you've got Kershaw. I mean, they're just loaded. So you got Scherzer and DeGrom. I mean, you got to have two horses if you're going to be the team to beat. And we're not satisfied with just getting to the World Series anymore. We want to win the World Series. And you need those two guys. You got to re-sign JV.
That's the thing. You brought up Scherzer. We're hearing rumors that Verlander's looking for a Scherzer-type deal. I mean, that's to be expected. I mean, especially if he wins the Cy Young. Who's going to argue with him about that? He's a little bit older than Scherzer, but that's something to keep in mind is Jim Crane doesn't typically like to give out huge contracts. Maybe he'll do it for 3 years. He loves JV, but you brought up Framber's confidence. I look at 2020 when he was so great in the postseason, nobody in the stands, and then last year, he really struggled outside of that one game. So that's why I really want to see how he does in big time atmospheres in this postseason coming up.
Well, he ain't afraid to spend $35 million. I mean, he's given Bregman, he's given Altuve. So I think he's got a love for Verlander. Well, he's had to pay him $66 million for nothing, but he also has given him these $25 million without any qualm. So I think he would up it. We'll find out. But first, let's find out what you're drinking. Are you drinking cold, clean, crisp, refreshing Coors Light? Because if you're not, you're missing out because it is the world's most refreshing beer. We all got to do our part. We got to keep Texas chill. It's 100 degrees out there. Are you doing your part? Are you keeping it chill? Are the Blue Mountains out there for you, keeping you cold and refreshed? Oh my goodness. I love me some Coors Light. All you got to do is get to the store and pick you up a 6-pack, 12-pack, or a case of cold, clean, crisp, refreshing Coors Light. Now, speaking of money, what about Framber? Okay, I think you upped Jordan. You got to do this with Tucker. But I think another must is doing this with Framber as well. You got 3 years arbitration with him, but let's get him signed to a longer deal, maybe 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's probably the good move. It doesn't feel very Astros-y, though, when somebody's got 3 years left on their deal. And he's already 28, and that's why I say that. In theory, you could be like, hey, I just pay him for 29, 30, 31, and then, we let him walk. But I'm with you, John. I'd rather go ahead and try and get him locked up to a longer-term deal. The only concern is this year, this is the most starts he's ever had. I mean, and we're only in August. So he just seems kind of like a late bloomer. So there is some concern. He hasn't really done it before. He's never been that 30-start guy.
No, well, we'll see. I mean, we got to see how he finishes first. I think I agree with you. And if he doesn't pitch well in the playoffs, then you go, well, until we see him do this in the playoffs, we're not going to give him a long-term deal. But it's not like the Astros did. The Astros did this with Jordan. The Astros did this with Bregman. If I'm not mistaken, they did this with Altuve as well. They're not afraid to lock up guys and get through their arbitration years. As opposed, Carlos Correa, they didn't, but you know what? They were uncertain about Carlos Correa because of the back, so they let him go through arbitration. But the Astros want to do this. If they got a guy that's going to be a cornerstone, they will definitely tie up their arbitration years as long as they get a couple of more years out of them. So I think that Framber is going to be a guy, but I agree with you. We got to see what he does, not only at the end of this year, but we also got to see what he does in the postseason.
I'm with you. The guys you bring up, none of those guys are pitchers, though. You know, like we can think of McCullers, but he was about to be a free agent when they did that deal. So they tended to go with older guys like Verlander and Charlie Morton. And remember, they didn't pay Dallas Keuchel, but he was coming up on free agency and was asking for too much money. So I'm just saying we haven't seen it with pitchers recently. So I'm curious if there's a distinction for them between position players and pitchers when giving out that money.
Yeah, well, they paid. I think they were smart not to do that with Lance, and now maybe they're regretting $85 million with Lance because of the injuries. I mean, you can't. As long as if a guy's always injured. Framber's not. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what they do this offseason. You're right. It hasn't been done so with pitchers so far, but I think Framber just could be that exception.